What's good, Lions fans? How are you feeling? Happy Tuesday. This is Johnny Gaz Live coming at you. It's 9:30 on a Tuesday night. We are here again, coming at you after what many are deeming to be a doom and gloom type of week for the Detroit Lions. Many deeming this to be the end of an era for the Detroit Lions already. Many of people telling me that the sky is falling in a week that we're in. So we're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about Lions Packers week 1. We're going to talk our growing levels of concern with certain things within the Lions system right now. Are we worried about the offense? Are we concerned about the defense? What about the coaching? A lot of things to talk about coming off that Packers loss. But like we do every Tuesday, we're live and we're going to be talking positivity like we always do. It's been a fun week, honestly. Even with the Lions losing, it's been a good week. It's always good to hang on to the positives. My son started soccer this week. So we're off and running, man. We're in sports heaven. We're doing kid pitch baseball. We got soccer. We got Lions in full swing. We got NFL in full swing. The fall is turned. So there are as many positive things to pull, even when the Lions lose. So we always hang on to that. But we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff here tonight. We're going to be talking levels of concern with my man, Russell, the villain. And let's kick it off. Everybody in the chat, I appreciate you guys. We're going to get you involved early and often here today. Come and say hello. I appreciate you guys for getting involved. Trim, how you doing, my brother? Hope things are good. We're going to be asking you guys in the chat today, what is your level of concern with certain things within the Lions system? So I want to hear from you. I want to know your level of concern. Let me know in the chat. So let's not wait any longer. Let's bring in our guest host, as always, on Tuesday nights. We're going to be talking Lions, Packers. Let's bring him on. Russell, let's get you going, buddy. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing great.
Say hello to my little friend.
Are you recovering?
Is that better? I changed my microphone. Does that sound a little bit better to you?
You sound crisp. You are crisp clean now. I love it.
All right. That's the Shure SM58, baby.
Oh, yeah. That's quality sound right there.
And I'm okay. I'm okay, man. This is a long season. One of the things I've been really just trying to drive home to people is like, this is not freak out. Like, you can tell the old fans from the new fans. It's like, that's that when we went through 0-16. It's like, come on, guys. You can't be jumping. I mean, this is a complete overreaction. It's 1 week. This is one round of a 17-round fight. And yeah, you got punched in the mouth, but we weren't trained to be soft. He told you in the opening press conference, when we get knocked down, what are we supposed to do? Well, we're supposed to get back up. We're supposed to smile at them, and then they knock us back down, and then we're going to bite a kneecap on the way up. Like, this team isn't in the doom and gloom that the fans are. I mean, I can't imagine that. I can imagine that Penei Sewell's probably pretty motivated because he had a bad game. You know, I'm thinking that there's a couple of people on this team that are extremely motivated, that are really good players, that don't take well to losing. And that's why we haven't lost 2 games in a row in like 3 years, is because we have the right guys. I don't know. My concern level's like at a 3 out of 11.
I got you. So let's set the stage here for this then. So going back to the week that was, Packers 27, Lions 13. We fit it. I've seen a lot of your content, so we fit this home. We know what happened in the game itself. So, coming out of it, I think there were a couple bright spots. So let's start there before we start getting into the negative town things, and then we'll talk about levels of concern. First and foremost, let's get it out of the way. The game ended with one of the more incredible catches I've ever seen, especially from a Lions wide receiver. And I'm just going to get it out of the way now because I don't want this to be the focus of today. But how fantastic was that grab from Isaac Tesla? And what does that give you for his outlook for the future?
I love that. It was phenomenal. That was like Odell Beckham-esque, like. And at the end of the season, they may be looking at that catch as one of the best catches of the entire season out of any team, because that was something else. Talk about making the most out of your opportunities.
And I start there because, unfortunately, past that, there isn't a ton of positive to pull. So I think let's just have a discussion first, Russell, because I think I was kind of shocked by what I saw in the game for a couple reasons. I'm not upset that they lost. It's okay, they're 0-1. It's okay they lost in Lambeau. The sky isn't falling. It's one game of a 17-game season. So I'll always start there. But I was surprised with the what appeared to be effort from the Lions players versus what I saw from the Packers players. There seemed to be a better energy, and you're going to get that from a home game. I get that with Micah Parsons and everything that was happening there, but I just felt like the Packers came out more motivated. They seemed like they had the Lions number. I mean, in so many ways, and we'll get into the specifics, but I was just surprised at the overall effort that I saw from the Packers compared to the Lions. It's maybe the first time in the Dan Campbell era that I sat back and went, man, they were outplayed. They were out hustled, and that's very rare. They can lose, but they were out hustled. What do you think?
I mean, I think that there's some truth to that. I definitely felt a certain way about it the first time that I watched it as opposed to the second time. There were things that I saw the second time that stood out to me that we'll get into a little bit later when I'm sure that when you ask me the questions of the details, is there was more to work with out of the game than I thought originally. And I do agree with you that they had more effort than us. I don't know if it was a lackluster out of us. I just think that they were on revenge tip.
Yeah.
They had a little bit more, and they earned it, man. I'm not going to take anything away from them. I'm just going to say that there were some missed opportunities on our part.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I was looking forward to the most in this game was the return of Aiden Hutchinson. And I guess another positive we could pull out of it is that himself and Marcus Davenport and most of the defense came out healthy from this matchup. So we're not leaving it.
We're going to bite a kneecap off.
Right, we're leaving it with all of our kneecaps, so that's a positive. But we know that the pass rush struggled. I mean, you didn't have to even really be a football junkie to watch this game and go, Jordan Love has all the time in the world. We know Aiden Hutchinson's getting double teamed. We understand. We've talked about the depth that they have on the defensive line and in the depth position on the edge. But Hutch had 3 pressures. I didn't see much out of Davenport, and I was more surprised on how they used some of their defensive linemen and dropping back in coverage on some third down situations. It seemed disjointed to me, the effort on the defensive line. What did you see from the pass rush effort against the Packers?
Oh, I mean, I think that more specifically, I'll say the third down defense getting off of the field was a problem. That's something that when they say that they need to work on some things, we got to tweak some things. We got to go and make a couple improvements this week, get better at a thing. I mean, I think that you can isolate it and say, third down defense, and it isn't necessarily just Aiden Hutchinson, but I would say both of them. And the fact that those are the 2 guys, right? Marcus Davenport and Aiden Hutchinson, both of those guys, really, they can make the biggest difference on what happens on third down. So I don't think it's a huge tweak when it comes down to it. I think they're going to work on third down defense, third and long, because they did their job, man. I mean, if I'm going to look at a silver lining in it, when I look back at the game, I mean, go check it out. We stopped the run. They were not running against us. Green Bay's probably one of the best rushing attacks with Josh Jacobs in the National Football League, and they weren't running. Our first and second down defense was spot on the entire game. There was that we were putting them into third and long situations all day long. That never stopped. And I don't think that's going to change. So when Dan Campbell says, hey, we just got to tweak a couple of it isn't as bad as it seems, that's what I think he's talking about. because we were on defense. We were really good on first and second down. They tweaked that third down defense. We might be telling a different story next week. Now, offensively, that might be a different story, but I'll wait till you ask me something else before we get into that.
Well, and sticking with the defensive side, let's talk about the levels of concern, because this is my first real one for you. And let us know in the chat. Let's flip it over. Let's get the chat involved here a little bit. What I want to find out is on a scale of 1 to 5, or 0 to 5, excuse me, where 0 is no concern. I have 0 level of concern. Nothing worries me at all in this particular situation. And a 5 is exactly what it is. DEFCON 5. We are absolutely concerned. The Lions have to make a change now or things are going downhill. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat. Let me know where you stand as far as level of concern. So let's start with this one in regards to the Lions pass rush. What is your level of concern for the lack of Lions pass rush in week 1?
I mean, it's at a 1. You know, it's not a 0. It's a 1. I mean, there's something that needs to be worked on in there. But like I said, because of the guys that it is Davenport, it is Hutchinson that have to, figure this out and can make a big difference when it comes to it. Yeah. It's at a 1. Those guys could play better, and it could be a completely different story. They could be getting off the field this week.
For me, I'm at a 4, so I'm a little higher on the scale, and I'm only
defense.
For the pass rush specifically, I'm at a 4. That was very concerning for me, and I'm only giving it the 1 extra point because I'm giving Hutch and Davenport the benefit of the doubt that they need time to reacclimate to the speed of live gameplay. But the fact that you had both those guys as healthy as they've been, you had Tyleek on the inside, you had DJ Reader, and they did a good job stuffing the run. You called it. They did a good job continuing their run defense prowess. That's been something they've been able to hold their hat on, and they continue that against Green Bay. So that's a positive. But they got nothing on the pass rush. 0. Guys like Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, those guys are double teamed constantly, and they find ways to get to the quarterback. I know Hutch will round out. I think it will all kind of work itself out. But that was the surprising thing for me. I thought if we could have held our hat on anything, it would have been the effort from Hutch and from Davenport that they would have gotten to the quarterback. But they were absent. So that to me was a big concern.
For sure. I mean, that was watching it, yes. But like concern going forward is where I'm not concerned going forward, because it is those guys. And I think that they know it. They're going to watch the tape and go, okay, I think that bouncing back is their thing. If there was something where it was just like guys were way out of position or they just didn't look like they knew what they were doing, and it looked like, I don't know. When I was watching Ben Johnson and his offense with all the false starts and all the miscues and all the little things like that, I'd be more concerned watching what Ben Johnson did last night than I would be like the Lions getting, they got their teeth caved in, they got sucker punched right out the gate, and boom, 0-1. Look at it, But I mean, don't you think that with a team like ours, that this might actually be a good way to start the season? Like smack you out of reality. I mean, people have been talking real high on the Lions. I was on cloud 9 for a second. This was boom. I knocked my ass back a couple pegs, down a couple pegs. I'm not, my chest ain't out nearly as far.
I think there's something to that. I mean, we talked how confident we were going into it. I mean, it was, and that's part of the offseason. And with the roster the way it is, and we can still be confident. That's the thing. We always go back to this was just 1 week, 1 loss. Hopefully, after this Bears game, we'll be talking a little differently. But to go with what you just said, and let me kind of reset this for the chat, guys. If you want to get involved, right now we're talking levels of concern. If you are at a 0, that means you have no concerns, and a 5 is maximum concern. Villain has a little lighter of a concern here for the pass rush. I'm a little bit leaning on the heavier side. I had him at a 4. I see a couple coming through. We got a couple ones out there from Davey and Michael. Detroit Wood is a 5, so he's already DEFCON 5 for the pass rush. That's surprising. What up, Greenfield? What up, Lean? What up, Detroit Wood? I appreciate you guys getting involved early. Let me know where you guys stand as far as your level of concern. But to go back to what you just said, Villain, could this possibly be a benefit in the end to the Lions to get punched in the mouth so early on? There's something to that. I think I heard Hutchinson speak, I think it was yesterday, and he said exactly that, where, the locker room will come together for something like this, where the fan base seems to get divided in these moments, where the locker room might use this as a way to bring these pieces together and work through this. And I hope that's the route that they take. And it sounds good in theory, and you hope that it continues. It's just, I think the scary thing is that all of the fears that I had going into the game all were shined heavy light in week 1. So everything I had feared going into it, I'm almost more in fear of it coming out of it. And that's what scares me. Well, let's keep going. We talked about the defense. Let's talk about red zone efficiency and some fundamental type things in this game. Detroit was 1 for 4 in the red zone. The only time they got that score was with Tesla. Packers were 3 for 5. And usually, early on in the season, those kind of things are what win you football games. We also saw the Goff interception in the red zone. So that one, unfortunately, it wasn't a huge turnover battle, but they turned the ball over in a moment where they could have gotten themselves back into that football game. So let's talk level of concern. Early on in the season last year, we had a similar situation where they seemed to struggle in the red zone. Do you have a level of concern with their efficiency in the red zone struggles now coming out of week 1? What's your level of concern 0 to 5?
Well, red zone defense, I think that's too complicated at this point. To me, it's like offensive line and making sure that they can do the simple stuff. I think they got to go back to the basics, throw an extra tight end in there and just start running the football off tackles and start imposing your will with the guys that you have and doing simple stuff so they don't make it a clerical error. Oops, I was supposed to go this way when it was that. And I think Glasgow takes the big, for the big hole opening up right at the goal line.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I actually believe that just judging by the scores, that was that might have been a stunt that was supposed to be there for Ratledge to be the one that was supposed to. I think they were supposed to switch off, and he was supposed to go to the middle, and they both ended up going to the right and just left it wide open to have poor Montgomery get smacked right at the goal line. No, but as far as my concern with that, it's like that's got to get better. They're getting that fundamental thing together. And Dan Campbell made a comment about Ben Johnson was 1-6. And I did the shows. I remember doing the shows. They wanted Ben Johnson fired after week 3, after week 4, after week 5. And actually, after week 6, I remember the show that I did because I said, I'm not the type of person that likes to bail because I really believe in this team, but I have 1 foot out of the boat right now. I have 1 foot at 1, and we were 1.
That was when it was doom and gloom at 1-6. This was back in the day, not now.
This was back in the day, and it's like this is 0-1, and it is a new regime, and I was wrong. It did have an effect right off of the bat, but I don't know if it's John Morton for that reason or if it's just the inexperience in the guards up front.
Yeah,
because I'm trying to help them and give them a pass because in their first, at least Ratledge's first time is in Lambeau Field and maybe the most hostile environment that he's going to see all season. And you've never done it. You've never done it before.
Right.
And you're going to go into that environment and, he didn't play well.
Well, let's talk about it because that's where I'm going. Offensive line is huge. To me, this is the thing that has to be discussed coming out of this game. First, let me shout out Spirit of Detroit podcast. What up, Doe? And if you haven't checked out his channel on YouTube, you definitely have to do that. First of all, man, I don't know what you've been drinking lately, but it is fantastic. And I want 4 shots of it because your videos are chef kiss. The editing, the storytelling, the truth telling is fantastic. So if you haven't checked out Spirit of Detroit podcast, definitely do that. It is fantastic.
You like that?
Fantastic watch. But offensive line for the Lions. I hate to flip this negative after shining some positive, but the interior, man, that's the scariest thing coming out of this. I actually thought, and when I rewatched the game, I thought Tate was actually okay. I wasn't mad at the things Tate Ratledge was doing in this game. I think what hurt the Lions, in my opinion, was the center play. I think Mahogany hurt them in some spots, and it put the tackles on an island in a lot of cases where it against a Micah Parsons, and when they're running stunts and Penny's having to rely on a rookie to his left and make up for the lack of things happening next to him, it really shined a light in a bad spot. Coming out of it, though, this is my biggest concern, is the offensive line. If this doesn't start to gel, the offense doesn't gel, Jared Goff can't be him. He can't distribute the ball the way we want him to. He can't get the ball out early. And we saw the effect it had on the run game, which was maybe the most shocking effect on anything, is the fact that they couldn't get anything going on the run. 46 yards, man. 46 yards for this group of backs. I think that's the second lowest total in the Dan Campbell era. Those kind of things cannot happen. What did you think when you looked at this offensive line play against the Packers?
Yeah, they couldn't get anything going on the run. And, you know, what's the worst about it is why I'm not freaking out about it, because, you know, it was bad enough that it's just like, those guys are young and it's going to feel different. It's going to be different on Sunday, just for the sheer fact is you're going to be able to hear all of the calls. When he wants to change the play at the line of scrimmage, there's a good chance that all of the guys are going to be able to hear the change and they're not going to get any confusion in there. You know, kudos to Lambeau Field for not selling Detroit Lion fans tickets and getting really, really loud and being a factor in that game. You shook our rookie. And I just attribute it to that, you know. Like I said, it's one game out of 17 games, first round out of a 17-round fight. And, you know, that was a tough one, but you move on. You move on to the next. I guarantee you this. I'll put my villain guarantee that they'll be better. They'll be better on Sunday. They will be better on Sunday. I just hope they don't lose the game.
Yeah, we're going to be talking differently next week. They can't. And we'll get to the Bears game because I have a few thoughts as far as if it's a must-win or not. But sticking with the offensive line play, let's go to our level of concern here, villain. 0 out of 5. Coming out of the Packers loss, what is your level of concern with the offensive line play?
I'll go up to a 3 on that one. I'll put it in the middle for me because it is concerning. Because I do believe they will be good and they'll get chemistry and they'll figure it out because our tackles are so good. I think that they will figure it out. Our skill positions are still good. They can make up for the lack thereof a little bit with their awesomeness too. So that's why I put it at a 3. I think they'll figure it out. And I have it at a 3 because I don't want it to move up because if this takes 6 weeks to figure it out like it did last time, you know, they didn't make the playoffs when they went 9-8. So we don't want to miss the playoffs and go 9-8. So I hope they figure that out in the middle sooner than later. I'm a lot more concerned on offense than I am on defense. Let's put it that way.
I hear you. We got Lean with a 4 on this one for the offensive line play. Davies at a 2. Michael D is at a 1. For myself, I'm right there with you, villain. I'm at a 3. I'm not as high on the scale as I was for the defensive line because I thought if there was going to be a true transition, it was going to be on this interior. I thought it might take time, but I wasn't thinking it was going to be to the extent of 46 yards and a 2.1 yard average week 1. I thought if anything, it'd be more of a pass pro issue versus them mauling and continuing to run the football. I thought they'd be able to continue to lean on that, and that just wasn't the case. And if they can't do that, I'm worried about everything else that happens. I'm worried about Goff, the play action, them distributing the ball to all these weapons. They couldn't do it because they couldn't get the protection. So let's hope they can round this back into form. Speaking of those weapons, one of the ones that actually I thought showed out a little bit was Sam Laporta. 6 catches, 79 yards. He was kind of that steady option throughout the game. I thought Amon-Ra was good early on, and then it turned into the Laporta show. We talked about the Tesla highlight. So the point is, the weapons are there, and we know they're still able to make plays if we can distribute the ball. But it kind of goes back to some questions with the new offensive coordinator and the level of concern there. So what I'm getting at, Russell, and I guess what I'm asking you before we talk about level of concern, what was your thoughts offensively in general, outside of the offensive line and run game, just the total approach, the Johnny Morton offense? Did you see a difference? What were your thoughts there from the Packers game?
Well, I didn't think they could get it going, but I think that everybody's so fixated on Johnny Morton and I don't think that that's the problem. Goff completed 31 passes, and it's like, well, all he did was the dink and dunk stuff. Well, that's what it looks like when the other team that you're playing tackles well. So instead of doing the right thing right here, which is we should compliment Green Bay because they tackled in space, because Goff completed 31 passes to the running back, to the wide receiver out in the flats, Jameson Williams out in the flat. They tried to get these things going on the perimeter because of the way that Green Bay plays defense. You know, they do that cover 2 stuff, man. They don't let anything get in the back. They got those 2 deep safeties. And because we couldn't run the football, they never had to sneak those safeties up to where we would want to take our shots downfield. Now, normally, when Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery or Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams catches the ball out in space like that for that 3 yards, they can usually break a tackle because that's why we got them. They're yak people. We want Jared Goff completing 31 passes to checkdowns and to our running backs. Mm-hmm. That's why, because we have one of the best running backs in the league. So, a little bit can be put on the fact that we didn't get yak. You got to break a tackle. You got to make some things happen. You can move the chains like that. You know, they were playing small ball. So I am concerned a little bit with but the thing is you gotta be able to run your offense, right? You get a couple of those first downs and then you're in a rhythm, right? You're completing all that stuff underneath. Then all of a sudden you have to sneak that safety up because you can't just let that guy just eat up all those yards underneath. Mm-hmm. And you sneak that safety up. That's when you go over top. We never earned the right. We never earned the right in that game to go over top. You have to be a threat up front first. That's the game. That's the name of the game. They were playing their game, and they got to stay in their game the entire time. And kudos to them for that. Is it more about what they did and maybe not what we're lacking? It's like, at the end of the day, that's a pretty good Green Bay team. And I'm going to say that is what it is more than what we're lacking. We got some work to do with our younger players. And I think once that gets ironed out, you know, then our skill players will be able to shine. Mm-hmm.
So what's your level of concern? 0 to 5. Lions' lack of creativity and explosiveness on offense in week 1.
1, 0. We didn't earn it. We didn't earn it, and that's not John Morton's fault. You got to make a play.
Yeah, I'm between a 1 and a 2. I guess I would say a 2 if I'm being truly honest with you as far as level of concern. I think in time you got to give him multiple games. I want to revisit this maybe after week 5 and see if maybe some of the thoughts on the overall offensive creativity looks different. But I go back to the lack of the run game. And if you can't get creative enough to find ways to run the football, that's my biggest concern. So that's kind of where I'm at with them. That's why I'm at it 2. The other phase of the game we got to talk about are the special teams. The longest return they had was 25 yards. Penalties were all over the place. I thought Jack Fox kind of even struggled to flip the field, but again, the offense didn't put him in great spots. I mean, to be backed up in your end zone is not a good place to be punting from, so not always his fault. I thought the coverage was shaky. I just, with Dave Phipp and all these creative coverages and now with the new kickoff rules, I also saw Sailors take a kick out of the end zone, and if you take a fair catch, you're going to get the ball to 35. or down it. I mean, so I just, it's almost like, was it coached that way? I just have a lot of questions. So do you, level of concern 0 to 5, let's focus on the special teams. Too many penalties, lacking explosiveness. Do you have concerns there?
I really don't. It's hard for me to say I'm concerned. I got one. It's week 1. I mean, all of the teams are really figuring out, and there are a couple now firing that are making noise already. But it's week 1. Like it takes 5 weeks to figure out what teams are. So and you just hope that you can get you more. That you want to go 3-2 in the first 5 games, right? And, some teams want to go undefeated, the ones that are just jumping right out of the gate. But, we're not in that pack anymore. I thought we were like, 85 Bears type of where we could come out and just smack teams with the talent that we had. And I got smacked down to reality. And we're just, hey, we're a good team. And we can figure it out too. We can, we're right in that pack. Like, I don't think that we're going to run up against teams that are going to have more talent than us. So it's like, figure it out, coaches. Yeah. Get her done. Don't make it 1-6. Let's stumble into a win here and there on the way. I mean, I'm good with 3-3, coming out the gate, and then we start figuring it out after that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I do.
So that's out of the gate, I picture one of those boxers that's just in the corner and he's taking shots. He's just trying to get through, round 5, round 6. If we can get into the late rounds, you know what Dan says, we could drag them out into the deep end, Johnny, and then we could drown them.
Well, my concern is a poor start, and you're right. If we could get to 3-2 coming out of the first 5 games, I'd be happy with that. But I mean, at 0-1 is where we stand, and that's my concern. I guess in my first argument with special teams, I'm not concerned special teams wise. I'm at a 1, and I'm only at that 1 because of some of the things we saw in the preseason. There were a lot of penalties in the preseason there. So I hope that they can clean some of that up, but I'm not concerned that that's going to be the thing that either drag them down or take them to the promised land. Yeah.
But Fip's the man, dude. Like Fip, he Fip's the man. We have faith in Fip.
You like that?
But what I want to know, especially from chat, this is the big one. And again, we sort of leaned into that with the overall offense and talking about the offensive creativity, but the coaching execution. I mean, we talked about lack of efficiency. The interior of the offensive line just didn't look prepared against Green Bay. Some of it being inexperience, some of it being communication, some of it maybe being coaching. And that's where I think a lot of people are leaning on. I mean, I think a fan who isn't as involved maybe as we are, Villain, from an outside perspective, hears that, they have new coaches, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. And then they watch the game on Sunday. And again, somebody who's not as involved is going to go, that's not the same team. That is not the same team I watched last year than what I have this year. And that's the scary part for a lot of fans. That's how a lot of things kind of get snowballed out of control. So in thinking about it that way, as far as coaching execution, do you have any level of concern moving forward? 0 out of 5.
None. No, zero concern.
Okay.
I mean, I look at this game, and I mean, you can call me a unrealistic homer if you want to out there. But this game, there were 2 things that happened in this game. I could say 3 major points that the game's narrative could have been turned on its heel, just even in the way that it was played, even with all of the badness. Number one is that the defense couldn't get off the field on 3rd down.
Mm-hmm.
They were stuffing them on 1st and 2nd down. Like that's one end of it. Is like if they were just better on 3rd down, it could have been on its heel. Number 2 was the Jared Goff interception. They made it into the red zone with that offense. As anemic as everybody wants to say that the offense was, they sure found themselves in the red zone quite a few times.
4 times
during that game. Yes, you got to score touchdowns in the red zone. Work on your red zone. That's something that flipped its. And one thing is that interception returned for a touchdown by Brian Branch. I am not going to poo-poo on the call. It was a hold. Awful timing on the hold because it had zero effect on the play. A great interception taken off of the board that would have completely flipped that game and in the trajectory of that game. So it's like, make the plays, don't make big mistakes in the big moments, and the game might turn out different. I mean, little things. That's why it's like the fans will flip out, Johnny. They'll just tell you it's the worst thing in the world. Johnny Morton, oh my gosh, he should get fired today. And it all comes down to, 3 or 4 different things, just like that. And you know what I'm talking about. Every Green Bay Packer fan was sweating watching him running into the end zone right there, making that a 17-13 game on a pick six and throwing. And then now, how are you talking about Jordan Love the next day? He did it again. It's like, it's that much, guys. They got little tweaks in there. Those rookies, they got to get better. I get it. But they'll be fine. We got the right guys. It was even though it seemed like an ass beating, a couple of little things. Don't make the mistakes. Rock Ya-Sin, don't hold. Get on the inside of the jersey, damn it.
Yeah, the score was not reflective of what I thought I watched in the game. And you could look at that, I think, in one of two ways, a negative or a positive. I think from our perspective, Villain, we look at that as a positive because you're right. The Lions were, 3 plays that you've just laid out away from even potentially winning this football game if they went the other way. So and that's a lot of NFL football. So you hope that these things that Dan Campbell says are correctable are truly correctable. And in looking at the national view of things, I always like to look at, what are the power rankings, and I don't judge the Lions based on how ESPN or NFL.com rates the Lions, but it is interesting from a national perspective how those things tend to look. ESPN had them at 3 last week, and now they've fallen to number 8. NFL.com was at 5. They're now down to number 8, and The Athletic dropped them all the way down from 6 to 14. So it just shows you the fickle, attitudes of some of the writers and fans and the narrative there. It's incredible.
They've been waiting for it. They wanted to slip, and that's why I feel like we have the right guys that are in there. And even if they do drop though, and even 0-2, I'm not feeling that far off of it because we've witnessed it before, right? Under the last regime, it took Ben Johnson 7 games to get it going. And maybe it will never get going with maybe John Morton's going to suck for the whole season. I mean, but it's just like, it's a long season. We've had so much experience in losing, Johnny. We know what this is like. Like you can always differentiate the new fans from the old fans. The old school fans that went through the 0-16, it's like, relax, go grab me a beer. It's okay.
It could be worse.
Beginning, yeah, it could be way worse.
Yeah.
Fine. And the new fans, they freak out, man. They're ready to jump off the cliff after one loss. It's like, man.
I think a lot of it goes back to the hype and what we saw from the 15-2, and we hyped them up all off season, and it builds to a crescendo, and then week 1 happens, and it feels like the bubble burst, and we know it doesn't, but it's a week 1. But for a lot of folks, it was that I've been dying for football, and this is what I got. So it's a letdown, and I think people are wanting to vent and feel the way they want to feel, and that's we're getting a lot of that.
Feel it.
And that's what makes the fan base so passionate. That's why I love Detroit sports, because they're involved, good through the bad, through the good, through all of it. What was funny is I listened to the 97 Won the Ticket interview with Dan Campbell. He goes on with the morning show there, and they had asked him about playing his players in the preseason, and does he have any regrets or thoughts on not working the interior of the offensive line a little bit more in the preseason? He actually I wouldn't say he admitted that he would have changed it, but he kind of admitted that, yeah, if he could do it again, he would have liked to get those guys more snaps so they could get the communication down. But we know that's not his philosophy. But let me ask you this, Phil, and is there something to be said for that? Do you think the years now of this philosophy of not playing your starters in the preseason is now coming back to bite them in situations where they needed a little bit more reps and time to work this in?
Well, I mean, there's evidence that supports that, right? I mean, started going back 2022, 2023, even 2024, last year even, and there's something to be said about it. Slow with the Rams, and then we lose to the Bucks. And, it kind of jump started a little bit in Arizona, and then it took off after that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something to be said about that. I used to poo-poo it. I used to say, no, what are you talking about? We can do joint practices, Johnny. Like, that's fine. And, I might give that argument, a little bit more of my time now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they should go out there for a series or two. Decide preseason game 3. Let them go out there and hit somebody.
Yeah. There's a lot of different schools of thought. I mean, you see Andy Reid and the Chiefs play their starters in the preseason for a couple series here and there. And I think that's part of them just wanting to get those reps in. But it's always, you're always the smartest guy after the fact, because if we weren't talking about a loss, then this conversation wouldn't be happening. And if they had played their starters in the preseason and somebody gets hurt, then the argument on the other side, and it would be, well, Dan Campbell's a stupid idiot. He should have never put so-and-so in the game, and now look what happened. So there's no winning that argument until after the fact. But I have to bring it up because I think this is one of those situations where it's a continuity thing, it's communication, and those things could be worked on. But who knows? They like the joint practices, and they felt they had enough there. So let's hope it rounds back into form.
Well, you said that he admitted it, right? I mean, if he admitted it, I mean, that's one thing I like about Dan. He ain't afraid to change something. He's not all so stuck in his way that he refuses to change something. He'll make a change. I mean, I guarantee that if Ratledge has another game like he had, Awasika will be in there. I mean, it's not. We have another experienced option that we can do here, but I mean, I think he still believes in Tate Ratledge and Mahogany to be these guys. And I really do. I think that if I had to bet money on it, I would think that Ratledge and Mahogany have a bounce back game at home where they can hear the calls. And after they've been, drilling it in their heads all week, all the shit they messed up, they're young players. You know what it's like to want to improve in there. I know that they don't want to leave that last blemish, and they have the gifted ability. They have the ability to do it. They just made a lot of mistakes in that game, just procedural stuff. I'm going to the wrong spot. I zigged when I was supposed to zag, and that left Goff in a lot of uncomfortable positions in that game.
Yeah. Steve Tracy in the chat says we have 2 centers on the practice squad for a reason. What I won't do today is have the conversation of, replacing players yet on the offensive line. But I think, Steve, you might be onto something down the road if they can't square up this run game. And if they, of course, have issues with pass protection and they cannot get this thing gelling. One, there's a conversation to be had for, well, let's now start working Tate Ratledge into that position anyways. What are we waiting on? And how many losses will it take to get to that point? And 2, how long does Graham Glasgow even last on this offensive line? Again, I think that's way premature to have that sort of discussion. We got to allow more games for these guys to gel and get this continuity. And I think we'll see a better, like Villain said, we'll see a better performance from them in week 2. So let's jump over there because we know we have a big matchup coming up week 2 for the Lions. Let me stop this music here real quick. I don't know why that happens sometimes. But we know the Lions are now inviting the Chicago Bears into town for their home opener. Ben Johnson coming off of the Monday Night Football loss to the Vikings. where they kind of blew that one. So they're certainly not rolling in it either. It's kind of funny that Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, and Aaron Glenn all lost their week 1 matchups. It is what it is, but it's what happened. So it sets up a fantastic week 2 matchup, Lions and Bears. What do you expect to see here, Villain, from the Lions? What do you want to see? And give me your overall thoughts on what you think will happen in this week 2 matchup for Lions Bears.
Well, I think that the Lions are going to get right in this game. When I watch the Bears, that's a team that's still definitely trying to figure it out as well. And we have a motivated team that just got punched in the mouth. But the Bears just went through a loss that might be a defeating kind of loss.
Mm-hmm.
That's not one where you're like get all motivated and be like, yeah, let's rally the troops. That's one that they should have won.
Mm-hmm.
And they really just let it go. And that's a mental thing. And we're coming from a spot where we just got punched in the mouth, and it wasn't necessarily like a wrong place, where guys did a bunch of procedural stuff where they got to figure out a bunch of stuff. It was just, a couple of rookies and young players that were maybe out a little bit in front of their skates.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot easier to fix and, go into and do a home game right here. And now you have the pressure of Ben Johnson coming back to Ford Field. That on top of that's extra weight for the entire team on top of everything. And I don't know if they have the makeup to go into a game like that. So this is a good opportunity, I think, for the Lions to come in and get right and really run their offense, have a big successful game on offense, and defensively do that thing, get off the field on third down.
Yeah. I would be concerned if I was a Bears fan, not just because of what happened in week 1, but because now you're going into a powder keg of a situation with a Lions team that's desperate for a win, desperate to show that they can right the ship. What I want to see more than anything else is them to reestablish the running game. You can't zero burger Jahmyr Gibbs 2 weeks in a row. He's too talented. He's too dynamic of a player to have him held down. And there were other factors. I mean, they couldn't get him involved in the passing game either. So they're going to have to do some other things to make sure that he's effective. But more than anything else, I need to see the offensive line reestablish their dominance in the trenches, at least for the running game. I know there'll be some communication issues in pass pro, and as they face different defenses, different teams. Minnesota's a tough task. Chicago's defense is a really tough task as well. They have a good defensive line. So the offensive line is going to be up for a challenge here against the Bears, but I need to see them run the football better. That's what I'm hoping to come out of this matchup.
Run the football. Do it better.
Give me something.
And, they were throwing the ball to Gibbs. The thing is like, I put some of that on Gibbs. Like, I know they were saying all the dink and dunks, but, blocking out on the perimeter, all of that stuff's going to get worked on. But it's like, if I can give him credit, that there was a lot of opportunities for Gibbs in this game. Green Bay was just tackling him out on the perimeter for the short gains. They weren't letting him get to the next level. They weren't making the first guy miss.
Yeah,
that's the biggest difference in that. And I mean, to put that on Goff or whatever, saying that he doesn't have any, like, if they would have broke 2 or 3 of those and turned them into 10 or 15 yard gains that move the chains on all of them, you're talking a different deal. So in this game, I expect that same, if they even run the same type of offense, if they're throwing short stuff, I think Gibbs is going to have a better game. I think he's going to make a couple people miss, get some bigger plays, move the chains a couple times with those. He completed 31 passes. They were just tackling.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that being said, then let's finish it off with this, Villain. What's your level of concern for this Bears Week 2 matchup? Your confidence level heading into the game with Chicago. Is this a bounce back, or is there trouble brewing in Lionstown? 0 to 5.
0 concern. It's a bounce back game. We haven't lost 2 in a row in like 3 years. That the locker room will this to happen. There ain't no way Ben Johnson coming into Ford Field and getting a W. You would have to do it first for me to believe that it could happen.
I'm at a 1 only because I have concerns. So I could not sit here and say I don't have any concern, but I also don't necessarily worry about this matchup with the Bears. I'm not going to call it a must-win because I don't think any Week 2 matchup can be considered a true must-win game, considering we have 15 more matchups to worry about. But I think the Lions are going to come out firing on all cylinders. I think the lack of explosiveness we saw in Week 1, the motor that they'll have built in will show that then in Week 2. And I think it's just going to be tough to contain some of what the Lions are going to bring on Sunday. So I expect the Lions to come out with a good showing. I just want to see better offensive line play, more pass rush established. I'd like to see the secondary not be put on an island as much and hopefully can make some plays so that we feel confident in everything we talked about in the offseason. So I'm at a 1 as far as that goes. So, Villain, let's cut it off there. Why don't you tell the folks where they can find your lovely work and what you're working on here as we are getting into the season?
Well, I try to make it simple because I'm not very, very smart. So I make it very simple. So it's at 10 a.m. every day, Monday through Saturday. You can catch me, The Villain Report. I'll be there tomorrow morning. I'm on Facebook. 78,000 just crossed over. Heading towards 1,000 on YouTube right there. Let me throw that link up there for you. I would appreciate it. I would love for you to give me a subscribe. Help me get over 1,000. That would be a cool thing to happen. That's going to happen here quickly. I only need like 20 more, Johnny. I'm almost there.
You're going to get there, brother. For sure.
But yeah, there I am. I'm on all that stuff. At 313 Villain is where you can find me on all that stuff.
Well, all right, brother. I appreciate you very much. I'm going to do my final sign off, but we will be back next week, Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Villain, I appreciate your time, buddy. We'll see you real soon, okay? Everybody in the chat today, Villain, appreciate you being involved so early and often. Steve Tracy, Lean, you guys are fantastic. I really appreciate your time. A few final thoughts here before we sign off for the evening. And again, I appreciate everybody coming and joining us on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back every single week as we progress through this Lions season, through the positives, through the negatives. I live and breathe Lions football. It was a tough loss at Green Bay. There was a lot of expectations coming off of another quality offseason. And yes, there were questions, but this roster was looking to be one of its best. And I had a lot of positivity riding into this game in Lambeau. And like we said there in our conversation, it seemed like the bubble burst based on the outcome. But the truth is, there's still a ton to look forward to. I believe the defensive pass rush will round into form, give Aiden Hutchinson a couple games under his belt, as well as some other play along the defensive line. Tyleik Williams should round into form, and I really believe that will start to become a strength of this Lions team. That combined with the talent in the secondary, I really believe that should round into form sooner than later. My biggest concern, as I mentioned, is the offensive line. I don't think you can escape what happened in the interior. Some of the still images we had coming off of that game when they were backed up in the red zone, that's tough to see, and that's not something you would have seen from Lions teams of the past. I believe they only averaged 3.5 yards per play in this particular matchup, which, again, compared to last season and previous seasons, it just was not something we've come to expect. So it was a shock to the system. But this Lions organization is different. It's not same old Lions. It's the Dan Campbell era. And they have yet to lose back-to-backs here over the last several seasons. And I don't expect that to be the case again in week 2 against the Bears. So you have to remain confident. The roster is still one of the most talented rosters this Lions team has ever had. Things will start to round into shape, and I believe the Lions have the right coaching staff to get these players in the right position as they head into week 2 and beyond. So let's hang in there, Lions fans. It's not doom and gloom. The sky isn't falling. Week 2 is coming. Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and the Bears are in for a rude awakening. And we're going to talk about it the rest of the week. Come back and see me on Johnny Gaz Sports. We'll have shorts coming out all week long. We'll have our game preview coming out again Thursday or Friday this week for Lions, Bears, week 2. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And we will be back again, like I said, next Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. for another edition of Johnny Gaz Live. Thank you guys for joining me. Peace and love. Go Lions.